New release from Europe, but with roots in the Minnesota area. Happy Apple on the air, and I want you to meet Dave King, that outstanding percussionist, complete with drums, toys, waterphone, harmonium, toy piano, and bruises.
How you doing?
Oh, fine. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on, Leigh.
Oh, it's just a pleasure. Tell us about this new music and setting and the musicians involved and what you have a very special group you're associated with very few footnotes.
Yes. Well, the record that the version of the new record that we have that you're listening to is the European version. The U.S. version is strictly trio music. That's the difference between the version that you have, even though that piece that you just played is on both versions.
And the composition title is?
That composition is called Star Child Cranium. And, on the European version and the record that you have tonight, there are some collaborations that we've done with a Moroccan drum ensemble and also a French pop singer on a track that I found kind of surreal, mixing what we do with a French pop singer. So when we released the American version, we decided to trim it down to just trio, because still in America, Happy Apple is still a very critically known band, but less known to the populace as we are in Europe. So we really wanted to keep the identity clear that it is a trio mostly, and so that's what the meaning behind both versions of the records are.
So that trio really is David King and Michael Lewis.
That's right.
And Eric?
Eric Fratsky, yep.
And Eric is a bassist, guitarist, and artist of the banjo.
Yeah, plays some banjo on the piece with the French pop singer. So.
And Michael Lewis, I'm looking at you, David, with the lineup of instruments that you're responsible for.
Right.
And Michael.
There's quite a few.
Soprano, alto, tenor, double bass.
Yep.
And miniature keyboards.
That's correct. Yeah, if there's one thing we pride ourselves on is sounding more like a larger ensemble when there's only three of us. So when you see us live, we'll do some switching up here and there, and just try to fill out the space. Less is less.
Oh, I wish I could learn that.
Well, you basically just have to go for it. You can't. It's probably not the healthiest philosophy, but some interesting things can come from it. That's for sure.
Well, when you went into this session, did you have any idea of what your music would be? This European release.
Well, we did. This record was unique in, I guess, the pantheon of our recordings. We usually we have a very strong idea of the music that we're going to put on a record, and we put the pieces together and we go into the studio and play. It usually takes a few days. This particular record, this new record, The Peace Between Our Companies, came about in a series of recording dates that spanned over a year. One here in Minneapolis, we did a couple of days, and then we were in Paris for a couple of days, and we were in Marrakesh, Morocco, for a day. And the idea was just to sort of piece together a record. And, we recorded more material than we really needed. That's why the European version is actually quite long also and very sprawling. And so we also have some unreleased tracks that never made it onto either version of the record. So I think what we were really working with was an experiment in the way we make records. And the idea that we would kind of piece together a record after we had recorded, figuring what works with what, and in that way, it's a unique record in our experience.
When you started out and the group got started, had you any idea that you would end up working in Morocco or Paris or beyond the green horizons of the Land of Lakes country?
Well, I know we had always had aspirations too. I'm from Minneapolis. I moved to California out of high school. I was living in Los Angeles playing music for quite a while. And when I moved back to Minneapolis in the mid-'90s, I had an idea of maybe trying to find some improvising musicians that were, really thrill-seeking, kind of adventuresome personalities, with also a lot of, requisite, technique and knowledge of their instrument and the history of improvised music. And I fortunately met Mike Lewis, who's a brilliant saxophonist, as everyone knows, in this area, but he's also very respected around the world. And same with Eric Fratsky, one of the most unique electric bassists in the world, and considered that. And so when we started playing together, we just really shot for the stars. We didn't feel limited from being from here. We actually felt like it was an asset because we could kind of show up in New York and other places on tour and really surprise people. It was like, man, these guys from Minnesota, we got this buzz going on us right away. And I felt really good about and proud to be from here, and proud that we've stayed here and we've done it from here. So now when we play New York City, we'll get a pick in the New York Times and a pick in the Village Voice, but we're still Minneapolis guys. We're still Twin Cities guys, and that really is a thrill for us. And we ended up over the last few years starting to get a kind of a sizable following in Central Europe and beyond. And so we're starting to, in the last few years, really tour Europe a lot. And it's really made its way into the popular consciousness there. So hopefully soon enough it'll be bigger in America too.
The name Jean Richard is important in all of this, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I met Jean. Michael Lewis and I were playing in the great pianist Bill Carruthers group a few years ago. And he reviewed Bill Carruthers' show for a French jazz magazine. And he was inquiring about who was that drummer and that saxophonist. And many people said, well, they have this band called Happy Apple. And Jean Richard is a record producer from France, but he also writes and does tons of things. And he was reviewing a show. And he ended up buying all of our records and passing them all around to labels in Europe. And we ended up snagging a deal with Universal in Europe. And in America, we're licensed by Sunnyside and Rykodisc, so Universal in America didn't fully pick it up. I think they were a little afraid of it. Anyway, he ended up producing our last two records, the Youth-Oriented and the new piece Between Our Companies. And he's a great asset for us and a great set of ears in the studio, and ended up really opening the European doors for Happy Apple. And we've been steadily touring there since and really feeling some success.
Well, I know, too, that coming up very soon here at the Black Dog, Minnesota Sur la Seine will present you.
That's correct. It's a fundraiser for the festival that took place last fall in Minneapolis, the collaboration between French and American musicians. And, it's a fledgling festival, and they took kind of a hit this year. And we're just trying to lend our support to make it happen again. So they've asked us to put on a benefit show for the festival this Saturday night, a week from tonight, at the Black Dog.
In St. Paul, Minnesota, in
That's
Lower
correct.
Town in the Arts District.
That's correct, at 8 p.m., if I can say all that.
Absolutely.
Yep. And so we'll be down there, come down and support a fledgling international jazz festival. I think one of the only ones that Minneapolis has at this point.
As you have traveled and been exposed to the overseas scene, the language of jazz and its roots in the blues and gospel, spiritual and all, speaks a very important kind of language. How would you describe it as you touch down in France, where there's been a particular segment of pre-war and post-war interest in the music, as well as in the United Kingdom?
Right. Well, I have to say it's a very heartening feeling when you tour Europe. Besides being very tired all the time, the feeling that you get, the remarkable difference from touring America and touring Europe, because I also tour quite a bit all over the world with my other ensemble, the Bad Plus, and I noticed this also, is that the appreciation for just checking out music and culture in general it's kind of a vast thing. I mean, that's obvious that it's a large part of some European culture, but when you play a smaller city in France, let's say you pull into, you're playing Nantes in France or whatever, and, it's maybe the size of Rochester, Minnesota, but you'll play a theater with barely any advertising, and 400 people will come out because they just want to check out the music, and you'll see entire families there. And and in America, I mean, you've got to hire publicists, and you got to crank away and hit a city 4 or 5 times before you start to really perk up the ears. And so it's always interesting for us because it's not that, because the American audiences are incredible, of course. It's that we just feel like at times it doesn't need to be flashing on a neon sign and in People magazine and all these other bright, flashy things in order to get the attention that it deserves. And so we're always pounding away at those sources in America, trying to get the same level of interest in improvised music. So that's one of the big differences.
And you describe your art form as improvised music.
Yeah, I would describe us as an avant-garde tinged progressive modern jazz group. I feel we're definitely in the tradition of improvised music and jazz, and we're most certainly not a reaction to any jazz movement. We're all big, huge fans and learned players in many jazz idioms. And so we're just trying to make music that sounds like us. You know what I mean? We feel we have something to contribute to the improvised music scene, and so that's what we're trying to do. We're not an open challenge to anything. You know what I mean?
Minnesota Public Radio talking to David King, and he, an organizer and spirit behind Happy Apple and Bad Plus. What a pleasure to catch you in your travels here, there, and everywhere.
I really appreciate it, Leigh. It's a great thrill to be speaking to you. You're a legendary supporter of this music, and a writer from Jazz Times magazine actually emailed me because I'm sure he's doing a book on you, or trying to. Did you know that?
A book on me.
Did you know that? Is that something you can talk about?
No,
or a story or something. Anyway, someone contacted me about it. It was really, really, really great to see, how much you are also revered, and it's great.
Well, thank you. You must be talking about Tad Hendrickson.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
That's right. I didn't get all the information, but he had mentioned that he was very excited he's considering interviewing you and has a project or something. He's a good guy. He's done a piece on the Bad Plus for Jazz Times and some other things. He's been a Happy Apple supporter for years. So
he has great ears.
Yeah, I told him.
And he certainly comes from this area originally, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He does, and so he knows of your legend and everything. So he sent me a very complimentary email about you. It was very nice.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know what I'll do with this ego, but I'll shove it under the console here and give it some AC and DC.
Well, use it when it's necessary.
Thank you. Well,
right.
For you and Eric Fratsky and Michael Lewis, David King, thanks so much. And here we want to explore a little more of Happy Apple's latest from Europe, The Peace Between Our Companies. And would you just interpret the peace between our companies and what that may signify or mean?
Sure. Well, to us, that signifies the idea of finding a sense of solace in a world dominated by corporate culture. And the idea is that we feel that from our travels all over the world that the people of the world are very united and have so much in common and have the same struggles and loves and dislikes and everything, and it's very heartening. I guess sometimes you feel disconnected because of the corporate or crass commercial world, and we just felt like sending a statement. We're a quasi-political mouthpiece also, Leigh. For an instrumental band, we definitely get around on our politics. And that's one of the statements, is the idea of that maybe the world should belong to the people and not the corporations.
Thank you, David King. And First Amendment is all yours.
All right.
Electronic, digital, and analog, and beyond.
All right.
To widespread spectrum.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for bringing Happy Apple home to us here.
You're welcome.